Alright, this is going to be a weekly recap from the 25th to the 29th, which is the last week of October. Tomorrow is going to be November. Today is, of course, Halloween being the 31st. I think I learned a lot, but unfortunately, I only made $3 the whole month, and I think it was just a whole bunch of mistakes and a whole bunch of progress too, but ultimately, I think with this last week, I'm at the point where I feel like I can consider trading larger size and maybe trying to participate in some of these setups that really worked out, but I was not like a large size. I didn't hold on to the trade that long. I didn't, wait for a higher low. And I think what I'm going to do is that I'm going to consider trading a larger size, and I'm going to be quick selling on what appears to be the first top, and then I'll try to hold through a higher low. If it doesn't have a higher low and it makes a double bottom from my entry, that would suck, but hopefully it can continue the uptrend. And then if it breaks my risk level, I'll cut it, but at least I sold some pieces before it did that downtrend. So a lot of the setups I pretty much nail. And there is going to be that one setup that doesn't work out, kind of like SIRC, which was on the 26th. I just need to not make, I just can't take them so personally. So yeah, that was the last week. I finished of just a puny $4. The only good thing really is that I traded the whole week in dollar volume, $1,300. So it's not like I traded $10,000 worth of volume and I only made $4. That would have been pretty bad. That would have been like super bad margins. But yeah, that wasn't the case there. And as for overall, on the week, 6 trades, so not many trades. 5 trades were green. Great winning percentage. The problem is that the one that didn't work out was almost my largest size, unfortunately. And I've been really good with some of these other setups. I'm at the point where I don't really remember them right now, but as we go over them, I'll start to remember them. But yeah, I feel like I just need to consider pushing myself and trading larger size, especially with AABB, this last one. Just something where I need to be able to just have the ability to hold on longer. Morning panic bounce plays, which I have learned a lot in terms of trading, are very quick setups, and any other setup besides that usually requires more time to play out, and I need to allow that time to happen. So my average percent gain was small. Again, I could have held some of these better and been more profitable. My average percent loss was just off of this one losing trade right here. Average position size was 175. That was because I did have a tiny position right here, a $14 position, because it's a short selling setup. But even with that one, it's still pretty far off of that other one. And my average time in the trade is 2 minutes. Again, some of these setups I should probably try holding longer. Not longer, but just better. And then the one that didn't work out was 47 seconds. Whether the setups were good or not, I got an 88. And an 85 as in did I feel like I traded well or not, which is pretty good, especially compared to last week. So let's just go ahead and go over these setups. There's not many. Again, only 6, and just a whole bunch of setups. One short and the rest were long. Let's look at the 25th for IFXY, which is a morning panic bounce play. So right about here, looks like a red day. Nothing too crazy. It didn't break that 96 level, but it is still at its highs. Let's look at the 25th, which was right here. That was a setup. My entry was at 9:37 a.m. 97.35. 9:37 was right here. And then my entry was 97.3, so basically at the very bottom. This was probably a level 2 reversal where I just see this nice downtrend, and then it looks like it's trying to turn around here. Maybe it was dropping, but then a wall of bidders showed up. It looked like it might be able to support it, it transitions to the next minute, and I take my entry right there, and my risk was the day low at 97. So you know, if this thing would have broken, I would have considered cutting the trade immediately for a loss, but this one did work out. My sell was 2 minutes later, I guess a minute and a half, 9:39, and that was at 99. Yeah, 99 flat. 9:39 was right here. Let me zoom in a little more. 9:39 was my sell right here at 99, so right here 99. My entry was here at the bottom. My sell was here. VWAP was 1, so at the time I probably felt like I might be selling right below VWAP, right? It might break it later, it might not, but I'm gonna take a sell here because it was looking a little sketchy. There was a lot of volume. This is an example where if I trade a larger size, I can, in theory, you know, maybe sell half where I think it might potentially top out, and because I tend to be a bit early in my exits, you know, maybe sell the other half when it breaks past VWAP. Now this one was a little weird in that it kept having 1 cent at the bid, and then just random, you know, executions at the ask will just be totally crazy. So it might have been hard to sell at the ask here, but there was a point here which it seems like it did trade with some volume, maybe not enough, where the bid was a lot higher at 105, because that was the bottom until it broke there. So there was plenty of chance to sell for a profit considering where my entry was. Let's look at my notes. I could have held longer, sold half. Yeah, this is what I just mentioned. And it also says that I could have traded larger because my risk level was so close. So, you know, I'm in at 97.35, and let's just say I cut losses quickly. It broke 97. And well, I don't change this one actually. I was like, what? Why is it still profitable? I'm in at 97.35. Oh, I meant to put 96. Let's say I cut losses, 97 breaks, 96.85. That's very realistic. And then I would have only have lost just $2.50. So in theory, I could have traded, you know, 100,000 shares, not 10,000. And that would have been $5. But in this case, where it worked out, you know, because I didn't have to cut losses quickly, that would be a lot more profitable, and that would be a larger size. But just because my risk level is so close, I could go a larger size. And it's not just, oh, I'm gonna have that as my risk level, I'm so close to it, let me put in a lot of size. But it was also like a level 2 turnaround in the bid and ask, so it kind of had more potential that it would actually turn around, not just because I just picked a random level on the chart, and then when it gets to that level, it just breaks through it like nothing because there wasn't actually any support on the level 2. So that was an entry and exit there. Yeah, definitely could have went larger, could have traded larger, and I could have probably have tried selling half where I felt like it was potentially at the top, and then, you know, it did work out eventually, so that would have been pretty cool. But that's not really a bad you know, one at all. That could have been much worse. And yep, still was a trade there. At least I took it. At least I didn't hesitate through. Let's look at the next setup, GBHL, which in theory this setup did not work out. This was a VWAP higher low number 4, which means like the 4th higher low playing off of VWAP. So a little sketchy because it's later in the pattern. Let's look at GBHL for the 25th. Okay, so 25th is here. The next day after this sketchy day. You know, unfortunately, this one just continued to head back down, but it can have a green day at some point, like a nice big green day, not like, oh, this is a green day. No. You know, it can have something nice in the future, but as of now, it just had this crazy run up, right? And then the next day, you know, it could have done a lot of things. It could have continued. It could have done a lot of different things, but this is what it ended up being. It ended up it looks like gapping up, and then, you know, just providing a lot of volatility, I guess. But it is a sketchy sub penny stock. Let's look at the 25th, which was the first day. Clearly lots of momentum here, a lot of movements, and my entry was 1054 102. So 1054 was right about here. 1054. Let me just zoom in a little more. I do want to note that, you know, that the rest of the day it was at the lows, so from right there it stayed in that range. So 1054 right about here. 1054 102. So that was my entry right here. Why was I interested in it? You look at VWAP, the pink line, it breaks under it, comes back, higher low, new upper you know, level here from the here, so a higher high, and then it dips again, this time right at VWAP. So again, here's a dip, here's a closer dip to VWAP. This one's pretty close to VWAP, and then I take one more at 1054, where in theory maybe this is the next dip, and it's not even going to touch VWAP because of how this thing is providing more momentum. And I did cut this trade. This setup obviously did not work out, but I did a good job cutting it for whatever reason. My entry was at 102, and I sold 2 minutes, well, I guess 1 minute and a half later. 1056, 1034. So right here, actually the red candle, and then 10, what was it, 1054? 34. 1034. So yeah, I guess right about here was my sell. My entry was at 54. My sell was right here. Probably didn't like the price action. Let's just take a look at my notes. A little sketchy because it is a fourth move. It would have been ideal if it was maybe the second here. Here's one dip and then a higher low playing off of VWAP. This one would have been nice too, and I think this is the one day where I didn't take this setup because I freaking overdosed on spicy freaking hot Cheetos. I ate like 9 bags of them and my stomach was like in crazy pain. I literally would not have been able to have taken a trade and concentrate because of how much pain it was. That was pretty dumb, but that was totally my fault. And let's see what it says right here. Okay, so I got out of this one because there were a lot of sellers on the ask. The bid tried to make a move, but it just wasn't successful. And here's one where the setup didn't work out, but maybe because again I was playing this range right here, the fourth higher low in theory. And it's nice to see, oh well, how would you have known that, you know, you would have lost money on this trade before it happened? How did you get out right before it fell off a cliff? There was a lot of sellers on the ask, and you know, that's why you have to take level 2 into consideration with OTC setup. So that was my entry and exit. Ideally I would have tried maybe the second or the third one, but the fourth one was kind of pushing it. But at least I had that in consideration, and I did trade a tiny $100 position as well. So you know, not that bad. That was a good attempt. SIRC, this is another one that didn't work out. This was my only red day of the week, and this was a morning panic bounce play that did not work out. Most of them actually work out, but here's one where, you know, I did my best. I cut losses quickly. Unfortunately, I didn't get to cut it right when I wanted it to be, and that my you know, sell wasn't perfect because there was slippage. But when I tried to pull the trigger, I definitely did my best. Let's look at SIRC for the 26. And I also need to not take it so personally. Sometimes it's just not going to work out, but sometimes I take it a bit personally. I get really, you know, upset, and then I miss a bunch of setups in the future, like I did with HMBL the day after this one, because it was the same setup, but SIRC didn't work. So I hesitated on HMBL, but that one actually did a really nice move. So that is another reason why I just can't take these setups personally. This one did not work out. 26 was right here. So it did have a nice run up the other day. But what I liked about SIRC was that it just looked a little bit clean, you know, despite the daily chart not looking too ideal. 940 at 48.14. Right here, 940. 48.14 was my entry. So it was having this downtrend, right? And I guess I can try to zoom in a little more. So when it just shows my entry right here. Again, 938. So let's just do one more tick. One more. I guess it's gonna show because that's when it closed. But you know, this was the morning panic balance play. I got in right here before it broke, right in the same minute that it failed. I got in, and you know, it was looking like a morning panic bounce play, and then it looks like it was trying to hold this 48 level, which was my risk level. I guess 4702. Was that really it? No, I meant to put 4802 because that was not the low. So to summarize, I was in at 940 right here. Morning panic bounce play, risking 48 because it held here, held here, held here, held here. I'm in this candle. VWAP is not that bad. It's at 50 cents. So, you know, there is some movement. If it were to just only get to VWAP at the time, that would have been like, give or take, a very small, maybe like 4%, just something small. But, you know, a lot of these do break past VWAP. So that was my entry. And then as soon as it broke 48, I threw in a sell order. And I was able to, out of my 1,000 shares, sell $200 right at the same price that I bought, right? But then unfortunately, right here, I had to sell the other 800 shares at the bottom at 4702 or 0705, and that unfortunately meant that I had to cut losses and take a little bit more of a loss than I wanted to, because again, I wasn't able to sell because it just had that drop until it got to the bottom there. And that was a trade there. I got out the same minute, because you can see in the same minute it was right at the level, and then it broke the day low. So yeah, at least I did cut losses quickly. I could have lost a lot less, but you know, there was slippage in this case, and that's totally fine. I shouldn't take it personally, because HMBL the next day, the 26th, offered one that was nice, and I wasn't a part of it for that reason right here. This was the next one, you know, and I hesitated, but this one worked out. I went from 65 to 70, so there was plenty of range, and VWAP was right there. I missed it because I, again, was hesitant because of SIRC not working. I need to just not take them so personally and be a part of all of the setups in theory, as long as they look clean. The next one, INND. This was a short setup for the 28th, so let's look at the 28th for INND. So you can see it's a recent runner, and it's trying to make a move again. I traded the 28th, which was that second green day. We did have a red day afterwards, but it's still at its highs. Let's look at the 28th, which is right here. Alright, and my entry was 10:05 a.m. at 14.97. So 10:05. I'm gonna zoom in, but just keep in mind that this thing had a lot of room. It made a lot of you know, nice price action towards the upside. It got as high as 18.4, but my setup was right here. But I just want to zoom in, but I also want to keep in mind that, you know, it did uptrend much higher. So my entry was 10:05, I believe. So this candle, and I think it was 14.9. Let's take a look and confirm. Okay, so 14.9, almost 15, 10:05. So 10:05 right here, almost 15, basically 15. It barely rounds up. So again, my entry was give or take right here, right about here at 10:05. And what was this setup? This was a lower high setup, so you know, it did make this move here. It dropped, and then it was trying again to break past that level and maybe reach this level, but just because of the price action, something I learned recently where like people who are behind the trading, what they do is that sometimes if the bid and the ask are super close, they get rid of the super close ask, they lift it up a few ticks higher, and then ideally people start hitting the ask, and then some yuppies jump in at the bid, and then they try to not realistically, but in a kind of desperate way, make it uptrend. But if nobody jumps in at the bid, you know, it just fails. And I did get short here, risking the day high, I believe, at 15.4. Yep, that was my risk level. Keep in mind, I was only trading a small $14 position, I guess $15 position, because of the fact that even though it's just a small price, you have to trade by that $2.50 collateral rule. So I traded pretty close to what I was able to. I covered about 5 minutes later, 10:11 at 14.47 right here. So 14.47, so probably right about here was my cover. And yeah, this was my cover. My entry was right here. You know, I played it nicely. It was a nice percent gain, and it did head much lower. It did get to 13.5. Just out of curiosity, what would a best case scenario been? That would have been a 9% move, just under 10%. But again, I traded small because I can't trade larger. It's a 1 penny cent stock. But you know, it was a pretty good attempt. Not bad of a setup at all. And I was right to not just be an idiot and just try to hold on to us thinking it's done for. You know, it did uptrend much higher. My trade was right here, my short. It did break the level. It did do an uptrend. I didn't partake in this, but that would have been kind of nice if I were to have done that. And out of curiosity, the third day didn't really do much, but it is trying to hold near its highs. So that's pretty cool. DWAC is the next trade for the 28th. Inverse head and shoulders. Alright, the 28th was the last. I guess I can't go. Can I? Oh yeah, I can. Alright, here's the 28th. You know, it doesn't look like much, but I mean, you can see here the high was 175. The low was $9. So clearly this thing trades a little out of range. 28th is a little further back right here. Pretty nice price action, just a bit choppy, but a lot of price action. Anyway, my entry was 1201, and that was 71.86. 1201 right here, 1201, and what was it, 71.86, I believe. So right about here was my entry, 1201. Why was I interested in it? Inverse head and shoulders, shoulder, head, and then we have that shoulder right here. It was also right around the same level, the left shoulder, the right shoulder, VWAP. It was holding above VWAP, and you know, this thing was just looking nice. I pretty much nailed the entire movement, and even my risk level, if I was still holding it just a little under VWAP, which would have kept me out from panicking right here and selling for a loss when it just came back. But if you go back to that day that I traded it, the 28th, you can see where I go over this setup in more detail. I was pretty spot on, and this is something that I can try doing with more size. I was risking a pretty far level. Yeah, previous dip under VWAP 68.29, which was back here, counting the wick. So my cut losses quickly thing would have been if this thing would have went down here, which might have been a little too excessive, because if we're playing the inverse head and shoulder, shoulder, head, shoulder, maybe it would have been better if I just risked 69.50, because then it's clearly not an inverse head and shoulders if it drops all the way to the head of that inverse head and shoulders. But anyway, that was my entry there, and because, you know, I was risking basically $2, I only traded a tiny 2 shares, so my risk level was just $4. I might add a new column in the future and just calculate what my dollar risk level would have been, because that's something I've been struggling with. I need to, you know, not just trade in terms of how much is my position size, but what is my risk, you know, my dollar risk level, and then trade off of that, and then try to pick a dollar risk number like $8 for right now, and, you know, try to make my trades as close as I can to that as possible, because that's something I do need to get better with. I can't just pick random position size. I need to have some kind of a dollar risk level. And my sell was 73.13, 1203. 1203 was right here. Let's just zoom in a little more. Why not? from my risk level, shoulder, head, and then shoulder. 1203 was 73.13. So right about here was my sell. My entry was back here. My sell was here. I sold in what felt like was a high, and this is an example where I can trade a larger size, and then I'd sell most of my position here, and then hold a tiny piece left for a higher low. And eventually this was a higher low. It did make a higher low higher than this level right here. So this is like the inverse head and shoulder second higher low setup that I sometimes take, and that would have made a nice move to 75, and then another higher low here ultimately, eventually, right, which was higher than this range, and then it made another move. And at that point I think it kind of just started the downtrend afterwards. So that would have been you know, something where, you know, this was a high again, and then, you know, another, in theory, inverse head and shoulders, but this time it absolutely failed, and that broke the head. And yeah, plenty of opportunity to sell for a profit. I could have traded larger too. I could have maybe had my risk level, in theory, closer right at the head instead of the freaking other downtrend that I had previously, because again, if we're doing the inverse head and shoulders, if it breaks the head, it's not there anymore. I don't have to risk all the way back here. So again, shoulder, head, shoulder, second higher low, spike, and then it put up a third higher low, another spike, and then it failed after that. And that's why on that other setup with GBH high, I believe, I was trading the fourth higher low off of VWAP, and that one did not work out, because the more higher lows it has, more of a chance it might stop working and, you know, make a lower low. So that was a pretty good one. Lots of great confidence after that trade, but I need to get a lot better. Last setup, AABB for the 29th. So you can see, it's a former runner. It went much higher, but that's all that shows in this chart right here. So yeah, the 29th was the last day. Second green day, right after it broke 1 penny and became a sub penny for a while. It tried to come back. This was the second day. You can see it had a lot of price movements. Let's just stop from right here, but as you can tell, at the rest of the day, it kind of held the same level, although it did kind of downtrend at the bottom there. This was it. And the setup was VWAP hold second green day. So I was just trading it because it was holding VWAP. My entry was at 951, 13.1. Oh geez. Way back here, 951, 13.1. Basically, yeah, right here at 13 at 951. That was my entry. Let's probably zoom in a little more so it looks clearer, right? And yeah, 951. So, you know, here's a dip under VWAP, here's the uptrend, but then I wanted it to be a thing where it drops under VWAP or drops at VWAP, but make it higher than this one right here, and then go for an entry there. But because it was holding 13 cents so nicely, I held at you know, I didn't hold, I bought at 951 again at 13.1, right? I believe 13.1, not 13.01. Right here was my entry, and I sold 2 minutes later, so at least not a minute and a half. 954, 13.24. Right here, 934, 13.24. So at the bottom of this candle right here, actually at 954, really I just didn't have the confidence. Even though it held, I would have been happier if it held off of VWAP instead of holding this 13 level. And then I got out pretty early right here, just being scared, which is dumb because I traded such a small position anyway, and I made, you know, $1.40. And here's an example where it just kept putting up higher lows. So let me kind of zoom out a little. Right, this is where I traded it again. You know, my entry again, 951. You know, here's a higher low, higher low, higher low, higher low, and it wasn't really putting up higher highs, and sometimes you don't, but you know, the higher lows were definitely there. and this thing just kept continuously uptrending. Again, my entry way back here, just kept putting up higher lows, right? And then it got exponential, right? I don't know when I would have sold if I was still holding this thing, but let's just see best case scenario. I sold at 17.9, which is impossible, almost impossible. That would have been $48, a 30% plus move, almost 40% on a tiny $131 position. Of course, I wanted to have sold up there, but here's another example where instead of trading a baby, $131 position, I can trade 1,000, not 1,000 shares, 10,000 shares, and then trade a $1,300 position. And then sure, I might be a chicken and I might sell a large portion of my entry right here. I don't mind that. I need to push myself to trade a larger size because I am right on a lot of setups. So I need to make myself pay for it profitably. Trade a larger size, but not be afraid to sell most of it when I, in theory, would consider selling all and then kind of wait for a higher low, and that would have helped me do a lot better. I don't know when I would have stopped, and I would have gotten out of everything, but a lot of room for improvement, and I think that summarizes this week. Setups were not that bad. I need to not take setups that don't work personally because some of them are just not going to work. I didn't take GBSI personally because I knew it was like the fourth higher low off of VWAP, so it's less likely that it's going to work. And this one in theory had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it got exponential. When it starts getting vertical, maybe for something like this, what I can do is just put a trend line. So maybe in theory, I don't know how to really do stuff like that on the TD immediate trade drawing. I guess we figured it out. Maybe not. In theory, I could do like a trend line, right? And then if it breaks the trend line, I can get out. Sometimes it's not really bad to do something like that. So yeah, that's about it. I need to trade larger because I am picking the right setups, and maybe I won't have the best sells, but I don't mind if I trade larger, immediately sell most of it, maybe half or 3/4, and then try to hold the rest out for higher lows. And then that can give me the confidence to eventually start to slowly have more shares available, not sell all of it or almost all of it, immediately, and have more shares to sell when it's much higher. And of course there's going to be that one that doesn't work out, and I would have been better off if I sold everything in one piece, but I just can't take those personally. So again, I just need to trade larger size. I am picking the right setups, and I can't take the ones that don't work out personally. That's all I got.